Welcome, folks, to the Andy Social Podcast. My name is Andy Dowling, and it's time to give some props. You know the drill. Each and every week, I do a shout out for somebody that supports me, supports one of the podcasts, whether it be Andy Social or Self-Starter, or even the band Lord. And it can be in a range of different ways. It could be shooting me a message of encouragement. It could be suggesting some guests. It could be buying merchandise such as t-shirts, USB passes, patches from the Andy Social store. It could be buying some Lord merch. It could be leaving a review somewhere on the internet. It could be just a bit of social media love and spreading the word about everything that I'm involved with. It all goes a long way, and it means a hell of a lot to me. So this week's shout out is for Jeremy Mutton. Jeremy Mutton is from Griffith in New South Wales, and Jeremy's bought a USB pass. And I think from my understanding, Jeremy, you're a fairly new listener to the podcast, and you've gone and picked up the USB pass to go, I guess, play a bit of catch up. So for anybody that doesn't know, the USB pass has the first 100 episodes of the Andy Social Podcast on there. In the future, sometime down the track, I haven't really verbalized this a great deal. It's been in my head, but I'm going to eventually take a number of the original episodes offline and just make them available via like a $1 download or sort of a bulk purchase like these USB passes. So they're just to, I guess, give a little bit of an exclusive feeling to people that are supporting this podcast, because I really want to give as much value as I can. But I'll probably wait until I get a few more episodes under the belt first before I do that. So maybe after episode 200 or 250 or 300, I'll start doing that. But nonetheless, the USB pass is a really, really cool thing that people can purchase, where it just saves on data. All the episodes is, I don't know how many, there's probably like 160 hours worth of chit chat and dribble on there. But it's a great way. You can plug it into your car. It's like wallet size USB pass, so it can fit into your wallet if you wanted to. It's easy to travel with. It's great for flights as well. So if you want to listen to stuff while you're traveling, and you don't want to use, data, especially if you're overseas traveling, blah, 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 you know the drill. So Jeremy, thank you so much for buying the pass. Good luck catching up. There's a lot of stuff there, and some of the earlier episodes are quite cringeworthy at times, but I'm really proud of where I've got to over the last few years with this podcast. So enjoy. Thank you so much for supporting, and please shoot me a message and I will send something else out to you in the post. I've got a few really cool things, some great CDs from awesome musicians in this country who've donated some amazing giveaways for this podcast. So please shoot me a message and I'll get some stuff out to you very, very shortly. So cheers. And thank you to everybody else that continues to support me and everything that I'm involved with. It means a hell of a lot. Cheers. Guess what, folks? I play in a heavy metal band. I am a heavy metal warrior. If you love heavy metal or you just want a bit of a sticky beat, go over to lord.net.au and you can check out our website, which is, I was going to say brand new, but it's been up for a couple of months now. I think it's pretty good. I can't stop talking about it. Tim did a fantastic job on this website. If you want to get a taste of what we're all about and this band that I'm involved with, go to lord.net.au. There's streaming music. There's all of our video clips. There's our whole back catalogue. There is merchandise. There's just lots of easy and really fun ways to discover our music. So go to lord.net.au. Go and check it out. Let me know what you think as well. In addition to me playing in a heavy metal band, I also host the Self-Starter podcast, which is all about small business, self-employment, and freelancing. So depending on, where you are in your journey in life, whether you are working a job that you absolutely hate and you want to get out of it, or you want to earn a little bit of pocket money, or maybe you are just starting or you have your own small business, go and check out selfstarter.com.au. I've got a fortnightly podcast that comes out. Also got a blog, heaps of resources, and I really, really appreciate all the support that you guys have given me so far with that podcast. Please search for it in your podcast player that you're listening to this through right now. If it's not there, let me know. I'm trying to get it everywhere, but thank you for the support, and yes, and for Lord as well. So lord.net.au, selfstarter.com.au. Thank you, folks. This week's episode is with Karl Hüttenmeister. Karl is a prosthetic technician, a musician, and an artist. He's a jack of all trades. And I say that lightly. This guy does a million different things. It's just absolutely incredible. But probably the most important aspect of Karl's story is his work in prosthetics, and something that was the initial attraction that I had, because I found his page, and I must give props to James Straker, who's been on the podcast previously. Hi, James, who went and liked Karl's page, and it showed up in my newsfeed, and Karl's page is called I Make Prosthetics. And I thought, all right, I'm going to have to click on this. What's this all about? And sure enough, it's literally what the title says. And, Karl's been doing this for the last couple of decades, creating, prosthetic limbs for amputees. And he's just been doing amazing work. And you don't really understand what people do. I mean, this is a very dumb thing to say, but you don't really understand what people do until you actually really sit down and dig into things. And the work that he does is absolutely incredible. The skill level involved is incredible, but also the emotional element of his work is it's very intense, and I love it. And I think he's got an amazing story. He has helped so many people over the years. He's been a direct he's had direct impact on so many people's lives, and I think that's just absolutely incredible, and massive props to Karl and all the work that he does. But Karl also plays in what feels like a million different bands. He's also an artist, so he creates a lot of sculpture art, and he's doing a bunch of different things. I was going to run through all the links, but he has so many different links, it's not funny. So go into the show notes over at ndsocial.net. You can click on the show notes. I've dumped everything in there. There's some music videos, there's some photos, there's links to everything that he's involved with. You can search for his name on Facebook, and you'll find his artist page, his art, his prosthetic page as well on Facebook. And there's just so much content there. This guy is just... he's just a workhorse, and we spend a bit of time in this conversation talking about how the hell he balances his normal week of just doing all these different things. And he's got some really cool approaches, which I've taken some pages out of his book, but very inspiring guy, really pleasant guy to talk to, and I'm looking forward to catching up with him sometime down the track as well. So enough of me, as always, rambling on. Please enjoy this really, really cool chat with Karl Hüttenmeister. I've got a bit of a curveball to throw at you straight away, because I found this out by complete accident, and I don't know if you know, but we've got a connection, and it's not,
really?
It's not a mutual friend on Facebook or anything like that, but I believe that we both went to the same high school.
De La
Salle and Frawley.
Nice.
So are you a Redcliffe boy?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I think I'm a little bit younger than you, but I went when we still had the two campuses, but it changed its name to Southern Cross.
Southern Cross, yeah.
Yeah. So but I was born and raised in Redcliffe, and then lived all over Queensland, and then came back to Redcliffe for high school. So I was doing a bit of stalking, and then I saw that and went, oh no shit.
That's great.
Small world.
Yeah, we feel each other's pain.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
I'm sure there's a couple of teachers that probably both had. I know I had a couple of people that I think they were on the verge of retirement, and they'd been there for a few decades. So no doubt we probably shared a couple of headaches along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow.
There you go. Well, I'm not sure exactly where to start, but I guess I'll probably just explain how I discovered you, and then sort of what you do. I saw James Straker, who's been on, who's been on the podcast previously, and I saw, how you get on the Facebook feeds and you see someone likes a page. And then he goes and likes this page that says, I make prosthetics. And I go, what the hell is that? This has got to be good. And so then I click on it, and then sure enough, there's no false advertising here. It's exactly what it says. And so I went through and I thought, this is really fascinating. And then I saw a couple of articles, and then I thought, well, why not? I'll reach out to you. And then it was only, this afternoon when we were having a quick chat that you said, well, I sort of was looking around and I noticed that, you play in some bands and you do some other stuff. And so I just asked for a couple of links, and then you flicked me through all this other stuff. And I had a joke with you and just said, you do as much stuff as James does. And James is just manic. I can't keep up with the guy. He's every day he's just doing some crazy adventure.
He's a machine.
He's crazy. Yeah. So, I guess maybe we'll start with the prosthetics, and then we'll go off on tangents, and then we'll come back and we'll go all over the place, but we'll just see where it takes us. But you've been making prosthetics for, I think, since the early 90s?
Yeah, 93 for 25 years.
And how on earth do you fall into a job like that? Was there an urge there that you thought this might be something I might be interested in, or was it just a job opportunity that popped up and you thought, why not? Let's just give it a go. How did it all come to be?
It was a stroke of luck by someone's grave misfortune.
Oh, right.
So it was my neighbour lost his arm and leg in a motorcycle accident, and he was just getting his arm and leg made at a place called Artificial Limbs and Appliances in Bowen Hills in Brisbane. And they knew that I was quite artistic, and I was already making orthotics, so they're little insteps that go in your shoes. And that was sort of a weekend job. And then I called the manager at this artificial limb place, and he told me to come in. And I went in the next day, and he showed me around, and he said, well, if you like it, I'll teach you as an apprentice. And that was pretty much it. I started the next day, and I was with him for 18 years. And then I moved to Melbourne.
What attracted, like when he gave you that proposition, I mean, what attracted you to it? Was it just the opportunity to do an apprenticeship in general, or was there something unique about doing that type of work, or was it the connection with your neighbor and thinking that this is going to be something with some purpose? What was it? What was the appeal?
Well, I think ever since I was a kid, I always wanted to do special effects with movies, and this opportunity came up, and I thought, how cool is this? You know, it could be a gateway to my dream job, which was making, you know, prosthetics for aliens and all that sort of stuff in the movies. But it just gave me my fix straight away. I didn't really want to venture outside of what I'm doing now.
Did that first job that you were doing in Bowen Hills, did you have a lot of sort of direct contact with the people that were going to be using these prosthetic limbs, or were you sort of just in the back end? Yeah. So straight away you sort of thrown into it? Yeah,
no, I was introduced to everyone from the start. So I got to know each client, and a lot of them became really good friends, and they're all really good friends today. I've had like children from the age of 2 or 3 who needed legs so they could learn to crawl before they could walk. And now they're like, one of them is he's a swimmer in the Paralympics. Actually, 2 of them, and they actually won gold and silver.
Wow.
So it's really cool to see, you know, all the clients that you know just grow as well.
Well, I mean, that's one thing that when I was sort of reading up on a little bit of it, and I guess when I read it, I thought, well, that makes sense, but I didn't really think about it, was the fact that especially, you know, kids that need limbs, prosthetic limbs, they're continually growing. It's like buying clothes for children. You've got to, you know, within a few months they've grown out of them, and so you would have to constantly be providing, you know, a new prosthetic limb as the child grows. So yeah, you've got like that whole life journey with particular people.
Absolutely. Children grow out of those things in 6 months. And it's not until they become teenagers where they start to slow down a bit, as you would if you're growing, you know. Yeah. And then an average limb would last about 3 years with an adult.
And is that just wear and tear?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except for Queenslanders, geez, they're hard on them. You'd be lucky to get a year out of
it. Is the material, I mean, obviously over, like, since you started when you were an apprentice and where you are now and doing the work that you're doing, the technology's changed, the materials have changed. Like, I'm sure that what is being provided now to people is far better than what it was in the past. And is the material more durable? Are you getting a better lifespan out of stuff now compared to what it used to be?
Yeah, I've been really lucky catching the tail end of the old school way, which was making legs out of wood and carving everything out of, you know, poplar and red cedar.
Yeah.
And now I'm programming my electric hands that are robotic, that use muscle sensors. It's
Wow.
just amazing the technology that's advanced in such a short time.
So, and this is where a lot of my dumb questions are going to come in. So a lot of the stuff I saw online seems to be predominantly, well, not predominantly, but at least what I can see seems to be a lot of legs that you're making. Is that the main thing that you're providing, or are you doing arms? Are you doing other things as well?
Yeah, no, legs are definitely the majority of the work.
Yeah.
I think you'd probably have one arm for every 20 to 30 legs.
Wow. And
Yeah.
is that just, you know, a statistical thing as far as the, you know, a sheer volume of people, and it's just a likelihood that more, you know, you're just going to have more clients that need legs over arms, or is it more of a case that just what you do and what you've been doing over the years, it's more of a specialized in that sort of field?
No, I think that the majority of the amputees are from vascular disease. So
Right.
smokers, really. Smoking has caused, I'd say, 85% of the work.
Hmm.
The rest is, you know, cancer and trauma.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, because you don't really think about it too much. I mean, you just assume that. I mean, I think I read a statistic in one of the articles as well. It was something like 8,000, you know, amputations a year or something like that. And I think that was a couple of years ago that article was from. But it's just you just don't think about it. And I think if you're not connected to it, you're not going through it yourself, or you don't know somebody that's had to go through it, then you're really on the outside. You're a little bit oblivious and ignorant to what other people have to go through.
That's right. It's hard to spot an amputee most of the time, especially with the legs, because most of them are wearing trousers and they're walking so well you wouldn't even know. So you're probably passing a few a day, and we've made up to about 380 legs in 1 year.
Wow.
And that's just in Brisbane. So, you know, Australia-wide, there's a lot.
Yeah. And I also saw that over the years, I think a lot of people are gravitating away from the lifelike looking leg as well, you know, and I think that's probably a lot of the stuff that I was reading is about the stigma changing around amputees, and, you know, that sort of, like, the way that they're sort of perceived and viewed in society. And I think a lot more people are sort of they're not afraid or hesitant to show who they really are. So people are sort of starting to, I noticed that you do a lot of design work and a lot of stuff that's sort of pretty out there, that's more unique and individualized for people.
Yeah, it's really good. I think the Americans started that craze where aesthetics were swaying more towards the artistic side and custom jobs. So we do a lot of designs on legs and prints and pictures, and we polish the chrome up instead of making it look skin colored and have a cover on it. So it's loud and proud, and they're just really, really cool things.
What's the most out there design that you've ever had to do for somebody?
I did a couple of legs for a little kid who's, I think he's about 7 or 8 years old. Yeah, both legs off below the knee, and I made. He was a Richmond AFL supporter. So on one side I had a Richmond leg with a guy on the front, and on the other one was a Mario leg. And inside the lamination I put some lights, so the lights all lit up around the design, and it flashed. And then he'd press a button and it would play the Richmond song in that leg. And on the other leg, he'd press the other button that would play the Mario tune in the back. I think that was probably the most fun.
Yeah, that's next level. That's incredible.
Yeah.
It's not just visual, it's audible as well. That's incredible.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's a true example of somebody being able to to where their passions or their interests and the things that they like, just visibly, and just express them outwardly to other people. It's not, you're not just saying,
Exactly.
not just bringing it up in conversation. It's a part of you. It's literally a part of them.
Yeah, and it's great for the kids as well, because I would imagine children back when they weren't like that would have been teased or bullied or ostracized as kids, but now all their friends want one. So it's kind of morbidly cool, but they're sort of talk of the town.
Well, it's definitely good for the kid, because the fact that they're in that position in the first place for whatever reason, and it might just be born with that, or having to go through some level of trauma to remove, and they've got no choice. They've got to live with what they have, and to be able to be accepted like that, and to have some broader appeal with other friends and other kids. I mean, kids can be absolutely cruel, just from my experiences being at school. So it's a good sign that kids are able to get that level of acceptance from other people.
That's right. Yeah.
What's the I was just going to say, what's the, I mean, this might take several hours to explain, but in a very high level general terms, what's the process of producing a prosthetic leg for somebody? Because I assume that from what I could see, every leg would have to be completely different for that person, just due to the limb that you've got to attach it to.
That's right. Yeah. First they would get a plaster mold made of their leg, of their stump, and we'd fill that up with plaster, and we'd modify it to allow for some areas of pressure, and then we'd make a fiberglass socket over the top of it. We're using a lot of carbon fibers now, and an adapter would be incorporated in the lamination, and that would allow us to attach a pylon underneath the socket, and it's got little grub screws here and there to make adjustments to get the alignment right. It takes about 20 hours to make a leg.
Wow. And
yeah,
this is a really, I've got no technical terms here, but the connection point between the body and the artificial limb, because I always thought, oh geez, it must be so uncomfortable to be able to have some form of some material pushing against your body all the time, you're putting weight on this limb. You mentioned some sort of fiberglass material, but what's actually the material touching the existing body?
Yeah, there's an interface between the fiberglass and the skin, and these days we're using a silicon polyurethane liner that rolls over the stump, and the pressure points in the socket are basically just underneath your kneecap, and then there's a little bit of pressure pushing on the back, and that sort of holds you up in the socket. But pretty much it's a total contact, so you're taking weight everywhere, but the majority of it is just under the knee.
I would have assumed years and years ago, for people that would have had to have, I guess, more simpler versions of what was available at the time, you would have had all sorts of pressure sores and blisters and things like that, because you've just got skin on a really sort of hard surface.
Absolutely, yeah. It was they would have a wool sock on their stump, and then it would just go into a wooden socket, and that was it. And they just had to deal with it.
And
yeah, that was back in the day when they used metho to fix everything.
I'm glad I've grown up in the era that I have. I mean, it's just I've bypassed a lot of the barbaric stuff that we used to do back in the day.
Yeah,
I mean, sorry, go ahead.
I tell you that some of the stories I've heard from the Queensland farmers on how they lost their limbs and how they just, what they do on them is amazing.
Have you got a particular story
Huh.
that rings that comes to mind?
I remember one guy. He was in central Queensland somewhere. He had a big cattle station, and he was out on horseback checking a perimeter fence, and he was 3 kilometres from his house. It was something like 20,000 hectares or something. Anyway, he was out on horseback, and he came across a bush bee nest in a gum tree, and it was too high for him to reach it, so he jumped on the back of his horse, and he was trying to cut this beehive down, and the bees got disturbed, obviously, and stung the horse, and the horse ran off, and he fell down, and his arm got wedged in the fork of the tree, and he was hanging there for. He said it was about 15 minutes, and he realised that the only thing he could do was cut his hand off to get off. So he cut his own hand off. This is a true story, and walked because the horse was gone. He had to walk 3K back to his house, and then he was airlifted back to Brisbane.
Oh.
So yeah, that was a. But I honestly, I could write a book about the stories that I hear about people losing legs and arms and.
I guess, I mean, I can't, I mean, well, it's obvious that I wouldn't be able to mentally put myself in a situation like that, because, unless you're there, it's really hard to sort of grasp the level of urgency, or not even urgency, but just the level of just, there's no other option, just there's no hope apart from this one outcome. I remember like watching one of those TV docos years and years ago of, I think he was a fairly famous guy, but I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head, but he got lost in the wilderness somewhere in Australia, and he was doing some rock climbing somewhere in like Northern Territory or something like that, and he was going between some rocks, and he fell, and he got stuck between 2 big boulders, and his arm was stuck in there, and he was desperately trying everything he possibly could to get out of this rock, and then eventually, and he had no phone reception. He was out in the middle of nowhere, and eventually it sort of got to a point after however long, and I think it was a long time, like, it was more than a day of him just sort of sitting there and deteriorating, that he just said, I've got no choice. I've got to get rid of the arm, and he cut his arm off, and it's just, but I mean, I guess, if it's a life or death situation, so you've got no choice. What's the lesser of two evils?
Yeah, it's crazy to think of that, and to actually talk to these guys, that have gone through that trauma and have just come out on top. They're just indestructible. Their minds are fantastic.
Well, I was going to say, do you get an array of people coming in that are going through different stages of coming to terms with, their physical being, because I mean, I wouldn't know how long down the track after, trauma or, something that results in losing a limb, would you then go through the process of getting a prosthetic limb to be made? I mean, would it be quite a while down the track? But, no doubt for everybody, it's a little bit different, and people will be going through different stages of acceptance or denial.
Yeah. They're all completely different. Some people just take it with a grain of salt and accept it, and some just can't let go of the fact that something terrible had happened, and they just can't move on. And that's fair enough. I don't know how I would react. It's something that is to the individual, but I think that majority of the people move on and adapt. We're pretty good at adapting.
Especially when you got no choice. Like, you just got, it's that sort of, I either just slowly fade away in my sorrow, or I make do with what I've got. And there's a level of resilience that's pretty incredible, but you don't really understand what you're capable of, or what you're capable of dealing with, until you're in an unfortunate situation.
Yeah, Yeah, and you just don't know. It could happen tomorrow. But most of it, and that's a trauma, and I think it's such a low percentage of our clients, luckily, that, and especially today with cars and motorcycle gear that's sort of improved in the years, and safety's a lot better. We're getting less trauma, and workplace accidents as well. Everything's to a standard. Where back then, in the 60s and 70s, from the guys that I know, were in such unsafe environments that something was bound to happen eventually, and it did to a lot of guys.
Yeah, I was curious to see how it's changed even since you've sort of come into the field of doing it. Where those percentages have changed over the last 20 plus years of yeah, as you mentioned, safety getting a lot better in particular areas. But are you seeing an increase in particular, people that are losing limbs as a result of smoking and a lot of sort of what did you mention? It was cardiovascular sort of diseases that are resulting in these sort of things.
That's right. Yeah, smoking and diabetes combined is a good combination to be on a sure way to lose something. It usually starts off with the toes. I think the legs, the lower extremities are the first things to lose circulation. So I think that's why the legs are more common than the arms. The arms seem to be either traumatic or congenital.
And especially for people that are, dealing with diabetes or dealing with cancer, something that's the result of smoking, losing a limb would be one of a multitude of issues that they're dealing with at the time. So it's just like a punch after punch in a way. So I'm sure that, that would be a different type of person that you would have to interact with versus somebody else that's had a very quick event that's resulted in, through trauma or something like that, or something, a child, a different scenario altogether. But somebody that's probably, a lot older and is impacted of years of disease building up. It'd be definitely a different type of person that you'd have to deal with.
It definitely depends on the cause of the amputation. The traumatic clients are the ones who are more prone to depression and, loss of self-worth and all that sort of stuff. And people like the smokers are losing legs from elective surgery, so they know they're going to have it taken off, and they're getting time to prepare for it. And the children, I think, are the luckiest, which is a bit weird, but they don't know any different. They've grown up knowing that's how it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's it is a weird way of looking at it, but you're right. I mean, if you don't know any different, then it's hard to lose something. It's hard to miss something, and if you've never had that experience of having it there in the first place.
Yeah, and they know that they're missing out on something when they see all the other kids running around without any trouble, but they know that it's been like that forever for them. They really deal with it really well. The kids are amazing.
Have you ever had struggles with doing this type of work over the years? Like just having, obviously the operational side, the practical side of it, of creating and you mentioned before you got into this field of work, having a real interest in creating things and being artistic. But did you ever, apart from actually physically doing all the work, did you ever have struggles with dealing with so much potential emotion with these people, and it'd be a daily thing that you would have to be in contact with?
Yeah, I think it was pretty early in the prosthetic stage of my life where I sort of was pushed into this psychological part of my job where I have to really take note of how they're feeling and what they're thinking about, and I have to work around that. Some of them are quite fragile. It's pretty hard, and especially not really having any sort of training in that area. So it's sort of depressing sometimes, dealing with all this emotion coming from these people. Well, it's not like someone taking a car in to get serviced. You know, you got to hear the life story, and it's knowing everything about them helps really well in making something for them that works for them.
Well, it definitely gives a sense of purpose in what you're doing. It's not even just a nice thing to do. Like you're connecting with the person that you're creating this artificial limb for, and so you no doubt you'd be putting a lot into it, which would be no doubt exhausting at times, because you know probably there's a bit of pressure there as well. You've heard the story, you can see the emotion, and then you want to make sure that you do whatever you can to help improve that person's life as much as possible. So I don't know, maybe you take it in your stride, but I think I'd feel a bit of pressure along the way.
Yeah. But that's where I've made so many friends. You know, I've really connected with these people, and I just can't help but love them all for who they are. They're just all amazing. They make my job great. It's not the fact that I'm making something or constructing something that's unique. It's the people that I do them for. That's why I do it, really.
It's pretty cool. I don't think there's many people out there. Well, I'm sure there's heaps, but I don't think there's many people from a sort of Joe Blow point of view that can say that they have such a dramatic impact on other people just in a day-to-day job. You know, unless you're working in, I don't know, you know, medical services, emergency services, or something like that. It's a pretty amazing thing to be able to have that sort of direct impact on people. It's pretty incredible. I'm so lucky that I have this, and there's not a day where I don't jump in my car and go to work and not look forward to going there. It's always an adventure, something new every day. New challenges, new people. It's really good. That's cool. Wouldn't
give it up for anything.
Do you, these days doing it, do you work for a particular employer, or do you do stuff on the side yourself? Do you do contract work? Like how does it work these days for yourself?
I work for a hospital now.
Yep.
I've actually just done my first week with them.
Oh.
I've just left the private sector. I was working for a private company, well, two private companies for the last 25 years. And now I've moved on to the public hospital. I briefly worked at the Children's Hospital in Flemington here in Melbourne for a while. That was great. But this is a whole new chapter for me, moving to the public sector where, you know, we're not restricted to one product. There's so many different prosthetic products out there made by different companies, where when you're working for a private company, they're contracted to use their components only.
Right.
But when I'm working for a hospital, we've got this broad spectrum of devices and materials, and it's just a never-ending palette of engineering that we can use.
It'd be pretty exciting. I mean, given where you've been and what you know, and then sort of going into, I don't know, I'm just envisioning like this workshop with these tools all over the place, and this catalog of different materials and options that you can pick, and sort of having your prosthetic world at your fingertips.
Yeah, it does look like a shambles.
Yeah.
Every single facility I've been into just is this chaos of parts and components and materials and workbenches and tools, and we've got all sorts of weird machinery to manufacture these things.
What's is there certain what's the best way of wording this? Are there certain sort of categories of, like, just focusing on legs? Are there certain categories of types of legs? Like when people are sort of coming in to have a conversation about having a leg made, are there certain sort of, I don't know, umbrellas of categories that they look at? You know, obviously there's like a lifelike looking leg with, you know, the skin color and everything like that. But then you've got the other ones with the metal rod. And no doubt you mentioned before about the child that, you know, you helped when they're an infant, and then going to the Olympics. No doubt they would need a completely different type of limb to do sport. Is there different categories of types of things that are on offer for people?
Yeah, there's so many. There's the standard limbs for the geriatrics, and they're all nice and lightweight. They have flexible ankles, so they can move around nice and easy. And then, you know, you go up to the hard-wearing limbs for, you know, the tradesmen and the truck drivers who need these legs that can actually hold weight limits of, you know, 130 kilos. Mm. So if, you know, a big guy and he needs to pick up a bag of cement, it's got to be able to hold that. Yeah. And then most of them are made out of carbon fiber, like the feet. So with that load, it gives a high return as well. So it's not this dead weight on the end, it's actually springing them off. And then you go to the athletic limbs, which are these big carbon fiber blades that look like a C shape. We do a lot of those now, and even the kids are using those for everyday legs because they just spring around.
Just something out of a sci-fi movie. Those ones, I look at them and go, "Wow, they're incredible!" And just looks like you just glide when you're, especially like in the Paralympics, and you watch these guys just sprinting with these out of this world looking limbs. It's just incredible.
Yeah, and now they're even moving into even more sort of niche markets like knee joints that are specially made for downhill skiing and waterproof legs for diving and all that sort of stuff. So there's no limit now. It's fantastic.
Are they looking at combining robotics as well with a lot of prosthetics?
Yeah, we're using microprocessor knee joints now, where these knee joints have Bluetooth connectivity to the laptop, so we can watch what the knee is doing as the client's walking on it, and we can control the hydraulics in it and pneumatics, and we can make adjustments to suit them. And then there's sensors that go from the knee to the robotic ankle, which can detect different sort of terrain, whether you're on hard floor or on sand, and it can adjust within 50,000th of a second, I think. So the knee can sort of freeze up a bit if you're going to be on unstable ground, and it'll know if you're applying pressure going upstairs, so it'll sort of lock up and help you up the steps, and same as going down. And that was a big thing for people doing something as simple as that, walking downstairs, and now they can do it one leg after the other instead of, one step at a time.
I mean, when you explain the mechanics behind it, the first thought I had was, wow, like these limbs that are being created are could potentially be better than an actual real human limb. But then on the other side, you think that's just how complicated our body is. That's how complex it is, where there's so many moving parts in our body, and ligaments and muscles, and the structure of the bone itself, being able to move in a whole range of different ways. I mean, even I'm sitting down on this chair as I'm talking to you, listening to you, and I'm moving my legs around going, oh wow, like this leg's going in a whole range of different angles and different pressures, and it can be quite complicated.
Yeah, I don't think, no, well, not in my lifetime, will we ever see a leg that works the same as a real one. It's more about quality of life, I think, now at the moment, and getting the best out of it. But I think that the technology is at the moment is so good with the human movement that those components together all work really well, and really replicate the sound side. It's just the technology is just incredible.
It's a real eye opener, because I think there's a lot of talk out there when you got the Elons of the world, and you've got the rise of technology, and we talk about artificial intelligence and all these different things, and it's a lot of buzzwords and buzz topics, and you sort of start to think about robotics and where the human body's going to go in the future, and there's a lot, stem cell research and all this kind of stuff, and so you think about the improvements to the human body, but I think we sort of forget how intricate our body already is, and I think we're still trying to get to the level of our body to begin with before we can surpass it and improve on it.
Yeah, I was still discovering stuff. Didn't they just find a new organ or something?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe.
A new part of the brain that we didn't know we had.
Oh, right. Oh, jeez.
Yeah, something in the skin that's another organ. It's just stuff that's just continuously being discovered. I think we're a long way off replicating ourselves in that way, but we're not far off it, I don't think, with AI and robotics. It's getting pretty good.
It's definitely exponential the way that a lot of this stuff is progressing, and no doubt you would have, or actually, answer this. Like if from the early 90s up until probably the end of the 90s into the early 2000s, versus probably the last 5 to 10 years, have you seen like a real exponential growth in options and improvements in your field?
Yeah, it's been incredible.
Yeah.
I remember when I started, they were only just sort of experimenting with oil hydraulic units, and then it went to pneumatic, and now we're into pneumatic with microprocessors that are running little motors that run gears to help you move along a bit faster or a bit slower. The technology is just incredible. The research and development side of prosthetics is the thing that's grown most, I think. And people are just going crazy with ideas, and they're not afraid to try weird stuff in the hope that it could lead to something great. And I think that a few common factors of the modern prosthetics are from people that have sort of thought outside the box and thought, well, let's go this way. And it worked. And especially like with the blade, for example, like the running blades, that you just wouldn't think of them to work like a foot. But I mean, you wouldn't be able to walk down the street with it. They're just made for running, but they have a purpose.
It's incredible. Have you ever dabbled in sort of a bit more of the sort of innovation side of things and experimenting and trying to develop things, or are you more on the back end of the operational side of things, of working with whatever the new ideas are?
Yeah, I'm pretty much the back end of it.
Yeah.
I just I just lap it up. I just love the technology coming in. There's a few ideas that I've got that I'd like to experiment with, and now that I'm in the new position where I am now, I think I'm going to have some opportunities to do a bit of research and development, a bit of experimenting.
It's exciting.
Yeah, very exciting.
Well, I'll shift gears a little bit, and I'll probably find a reason to come back to prosthetics because I'm just so fascinated with it. I actually had, I don't know if you've seen it, but earlier this year I had a couple of guys, Adam and Damien from Odd Studio, on the podcast, and they do prosthetics for special effects in movies, and they do creature creation as well. And and so what you mentioned earlier in the piece about sort of where you were hoping to go, that sort of, it made me think of those guys. And I got to see a quick glimpse of their studio in Sydney in Marrickville, and I was just blown away with what they've created and what they create. They've done stuff for Alien and Star Wars and all sorts of stuff. And I'll send you some stuff that you can check out. But I'm really fascinated with people being able to create tangible objects, anything, any form of sculptured art or anything that's I don't have the technical terms of what it is, but prosthetics and just building things is just absolutely incredible. And to get to that form or that level of it's not even lifelike, because a lot of this stuff is out of this world, but it's just that it's to make it sort of become a reality. It's just a really incredible thing. And so when I saw what you do, I just thought this is really cool, because it's a completely different tangent, but you're using the same principles in a way.
Yeah. I do think that like the special effects industry does use a lot of techniques that we do, and we use a lot of their techniques. And I've got a friend, Kylie in Brisbane, who's a special effects artist, and she did a little bit of work with me for a while as placement, and we did discover that a lot of the things are very common, but the only difference is that I'm making them for humans and she's making them for aliens.
Who knows?
And I'm totally jealous.
She's probably, on the flip side, she's probably quite jealous of what you're doing as well, because it's that you're both doing things that impact others, but in just different ways. And what you do is such a unique connection that most people would never get to experience. And then what she does, absolutely, there's very few people that would be able to have those types of experiences as well. So it's all pretty out there and all pretty interesting for somebody who's on the other side of the fence.
Yeah. We're a crazy bunch. Yeah.
Have you ever had, how does it come up in conversation when you meet people for the first time, and those stereotypical parties or a dinner with some friends or whatever, and you meet somebody for the first time, and usually that stereotypical question, oh yeah, what do you do? How does that go down?
I usually get a funny look each time. It takes a while for them to process what I do. But it's a good conversation starter, that's for sure.
Oh, I tell you what, I think I'm envious of that, because I think that's perfect. Some people get an interesting book to chuck on the coffee table so someone can flick through it, so you can kickstart a conversation, and you can just say, well, I create prosthetic limbs. And it's like, oh, okay, all right, well, let's go down that path and have a chat then. Yeah, incredible.
Yeah, it happens a lot.
I bet. A slight tangent, but I think there's some similarities here, because I had a look at your artist page on Facebook and all those, I don't know how many pages you linked me to, but I've got them all saved. I'm going to chuck them all in the show notes for this episode so people can check them out as we're talking through stuff. But I had a look at your artist page and the stuff that you do, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I see parallels in your prosthetic work that you do professionally and some of the artistic stuff that you're doing as well. I mean, some of the masks that you're doing, I mean, there's, and forgive me if there's not a better word to describe this, but the first thing I thought was far out there, creepy looking things, but they're so cool. But there's that feeling of, you know, using similar concepts or principles that you've learnt, you know, creating prosthetic limbs.
I've made a lot of art pieces in the time that I've been making prosthetics, and I think the connection is that I use a lot of prosthetic parts to make my art pieces. So that the leather masks are all sort of offcuts of thigh lace, artificial limbs, and I use a lot of old components from legs to make other pieces. And I had a couple of there was an art exhibition in Brisbane a few years back called Spare Parts, where artists were given prosthetic limbs to do whatever they wanted with them to make art pieces, and I was one of the artists and made it was a bird I made out of a leg with some arm parts.
Oh, I think I might. Is that on your Facebook page? I think I saw it.
I think it might be. It's way back.
Yeah.
And then I made another art piece for another Spare Parts exhibition, which was in London for the London Olympics, and I think that was coincided with the Paralympics over there. Yeah. But I haven't stopped. I've just keep making bits and pieces out of artificial limbs. My garage is full of bits, full of arms and old arms, and this is kind of creepy. But I took a plaster cast of my own head, and I used that as a mold to make my masks.
Wow.
Just boiling leather and hammering it into plaster, and then hand sewing it all together.
It's so out there, and I think if nobody knew the full story or the context, it'd look so incredibly morbid. Can you imagine someone just, you know, for whatever reason, just, you know, stopping by, not really knowing you, and just happen to walk into that garage of yours?
Well, I took one of the leather masks along to a Slayer signing one day. It was at Toombul Music of all places.
Oh man!
And I was there for 6 hours. I lined up. I was the first guy there, and met Carrie King and the rest of them, and they all signed it for me.
Oh wow!
I've still got that one, and then one night I was in the Valley in Brisbane and was hanging out with Fear Factory, and I had a mask with me, and they all signed it, and they were running around with it on their head, and Korn were there as well, and they were standing around a pool table, but they weren't doing much. They weren't too interested in it. But Fear Factory dug it.
Wow, that's so cool. I mean, geez, I don't know what I'm more impressed with, the fact that you've had these masks, you know, signed by these incredible bands, or just the name drop of Toombul Music. I think I just went through some vortex and went back in time in this time machine, and I remember buying Metallica VHSs from there that were, you know, $40 a pop. Import videos.
I used to get all my Kiss merch there. It was great.
Wow. There you go. Far out, man. Small world. Oh, incredible. Have you got a photo of that Slayer mask?
Yeah, I can post that up.
Yeah, I'll have to show people that. That's really cool.
Yeah.
What's the do you have some sort of inspiration that, I mean, obviously, you know, working in this field for so many years, you get inspired by what you do, and that has an influence on what you create artistically on the side. But do you have, like, you know, are there other artists out there that you sort of draw inspiration from, even when you were younger, that sort of led you down this path of this type or this style of art that you're creating?
I really liked H.R. Geiger.
Yeah.
All that biomechanical sort of sci-fi stuff, and I really dug that. And then I really like the art of Mark Ryden, who does a lot of oil paintings, but really weird, sort of surreal landscapes. these people with giant eyes and a girl wearing a dress made out of meat and stuff like that. So it's just really bizarre. The more bizarre, the better. But that, I think sci-fi is my big thing. I've always been a big Star Wars fan, and just stuff that was out of this world.
Does that... Do you sleep well at night? do you
sleep like a log.
do you have any like really out there dreams? Well, actually, it's probably a half legitimate question. Do you have like dreams that inspire a lot of this stuff, or is it more sort of just things that you're engrossed in that sort of sci-fi world and that sort of bizarro world that you're into? Yeah,
I think sci-fi visually gives me the stimulation to create three-dimensional pieces. The dreams are something I use to write songs.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. Get a few ideas to create stuff like that. Just in the personal sort of solo music career that I'm trying to pursue is mainly dark sort of murder ballads.
It falls in line with it seems to be...
which really isn't the majority of my dreams, because I don't really remember dreams, but the ones that I do sort of give me ideas for creepy scenarios.
Well, I get you can never explain. It's like anything. You try and explain a dream to somebody the next day, and you just stumble all over your words. But I have these. You get feelings, and I don't know how to explain it, or a color, or something, just something really odd. But you can never put your finger on it or explain it. You can't put a word against it. But you get and I hate the word because I sound so like bro, but it's the vibe that you get, and it's just I don't know what it is, and that can definitely, no doubt, would influence a lot of people in art, whether that be, sculpturing or music or any form of art creation. Having these feelings or whatever it might be, even if you can't pick out that storyline or whatever the plot was that you were actually going through.
Yeah, it is like a feeling, and you don't really know what it's going to sort of evolve into until you start working on something, even if it's writing a first line or putting a couple of pieces together in the garage, and then you start to see something. But it's something that you've already seen, but you don't know what it is yet. It's a weird thing. Yeah, it's just an instinct, I think, that makes you do things.
I used to go, well, I probably should try this again, because it kind of half worked at the time, but years and years ago, in the band, we were like writing music, and, we went through this period. It's like, okay, for the next, X amount of period of time, we've got to compile all of our riffs, our lyrics, our music ideas, songs, whatever it is, and we'll dump it all together, and we'll try and get this album up and running. So in my head, and my focus was creation. I'm trying to create stuff, and I'm trying to slap everything together. And what I did, it sounds so ridiculous actually verbalizing this, because I haven't told anyone this for years, but I had a little old school dictaphone next to my bed, a little cassette recorder. And so I would wake up in the middle of the night with what I thought was the next big hit. And so I would press record, and this would be like 3:00 in the morning, and be like, and then I press stop, and then I'd put it back on the bedside, and I'd roll over, all content, thinking, I cannot wait for the morning. And then the next day, I'd play this shit back and go, what the hell was that? And realizing, and some days waking up and not even remembering that I did it, sort of being still half out of it in some stage of sleep, and absolutely incredible. However, I did get a couple of half decent melody lines out of it, where I listened to it and reinterpreted it with a bit more of a sound and a bit more sound mind and a bit more clarity, and went, okay, I think I've got a melody line out of this now. So maybe it helped paint a bit of a picture that I couldn't quite articulate 3 o'clock in the morning. But
everything has a purpose.
Oh man, I thought I was a genius at the time. I was telling a few mates, okay, you got to try this out, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, really?" I'm like, "Yeah." But then when I started playing back these tapes, I thought, I'm not going to show anybody these things.
Man, I remember doing stuff like that as well. Yeah, waking up, picking the guitar up, and hitting record on the cassette player, and thinking, and this is in my bedroom in Kippering in Redcliffe, and thinking, oh man, I'm going to be bigger than INXS. And listening back, it was shit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, we must have lived so close to each other, because I was in Clontarf. I was not far at all from Kippering. So
I was all over the peninsula. I was Scarborough, Redcliffe, Margate, all over the joint.
Yeah, there you go, hanging out at Kippering shops.
Yeah.
Incredible. Yeah. So you gave me a few links to some of the music that you're involved with, and one of them was Tumble Turn, but then you also had, and you correct me if I don't pronounce this right, but Kalashnik. Anybody that listens to this podcast has heard me so countless times just continuously like butcher people's names, butcher words. I am the worst when it comes to phonetics.
Kalashnik's easy to remember if you think of it as 3 mad idiots, Carl, Ashley, and Nick. And together we're Kalashnik.
Oh, right, there you go. That'll help me in future. So you got that, and then you've also got a separate solo thing under your name as well. But this might be a really stupid question, but where the hell do you have the time to do everything?
Time management.
Yeah. Do you have any tips? Because people say to me that I do a lot, but I sort of sat there this afternoon and I was looking through everything. I went, oh shit, man! Like you've got a lot on your plate.
Yeah, time gets away from you. I think keeping a diary is quite handy. Yeah. I never used to, and I never used to be this proactive until. Probably 10 years ago, when I started to think, I should start doing a bit more, and then I just can't stop. If I'm sitting on the couch at night, I feel a bit guilty that I'm not producing something. So yeah, having all these musical projects and art projects as well sort of keeps me busy.
I think no doubt it would be, from a health point of view, it's probably like a really good escape from sometimes when, your traditional job. It's so funny to say when you're doing what you've been doing for the last 20 plus years, but, doing your professional job and then the weight that you would have to carry at times and how intense that could be to have that creative outlet in a number of different pockets would be pretty good for your mental health at times.
Yeah. I guess that my art being so surreal and artificial and sci-fi is sort of an extreme escapism from reality of working with these people and helping them. It just gets me like well and truly out of my headspace making stuff like that. And I think that's why, I've always been into that sort of escapism. I started off with Star Wars, I think, as a kid, and I didn't really have that many friends. So my friends were my Star Wars figures, and they'd take me out and about to other planets where I didn't have to deal with the reality of school and all that sort of stuff, bullying was a bit of a problem. So it was helpful. And I think that, my art now is sort of reflecting on, it's like a coping mechanism, I guess, for my day job.
It's a good thing to have. I mean, a lot of people don't have that at all. I mean, regardless of the type of job that people have, you as you said before, people you sit on the couch, and I mean, I'm exactly the same. I either feel guilty or I just get really irritable really quickly because I can't sit still. I have to have my head in something. I have to be doing something. I have to be even sometimes physically moving around, like shuffling stuff and flicking pages and moving things around, like just to feel like I'm being productive. And sometimes that can be a bad thing because you're not actually being productive. You're just wasting time. But I can't sit there and so many people, for a lot of people's, for a lack of a better term, their existence is this revolving thing of going to work, not a stereotypical 9-to-5 job, and coming home and then plonking on the couch and watching whatever rubbish on TV and going to bed and repeat. And then they've got the weekend and whatever, and then they're back to Monday morning. And it's and I think there's some people are content and happy with that, but I think there's a lot of mental health issues that come off the back of that as well, because people just don't have anywhere to escape apart from sitting on a couch and maybe watching TV. So there's nothing that they're really sort of putting, there's nothing that they're putting themselves into. They're not contributing to anything, even just that's for themselves. It's interesting. And I think, I think a lot of people are lucky that where they do have a bit of a creative flair or have really sort of embraced it. Because I think everyone's creative, but most people just don't dig below the surface to find the creativity. So I think the people that have embraced it, it's a pretty powerful thing.
Yeah, I think everybody's creative in their own way. They just got to find their niche. A lot of people do just live to work, and when they are home or out relaxing, they're talking about work. And I don't get that.
Yeah.
I don't mind talking about what I do, but I wouldn't go out of my way to talk about it. I like to remove myself from it, and I think that I try and do so much more outside of work now because I'm getting older, and I feel this sort of sense of urgency to leave a mark and do as much as I can before time's up. And I sort of really embraced that sort of notion that this is our only shot and we got to give it everything we got. I certainly don't treat my body like a temple. I know I'm here for a good time, not a long time. But my lifestyle and my health sort of suits what I do. I mean, thinking along the lines of people who lose their legs, I smoke and ride motorbikes, so I'm really going against the grain.
You get these warning signs in front of you on a daily basis, and it's like, I'll be right.
Yeah, you got to understand your clients. So,
What you said before, though, I mean, about sort of getting to that point now where you want to do as much as you can while you can. Do you take that on board in a positive way, or have you gone through a period of a little bit of panic where, I mean, I had what I referred to as my 30 crisis, when I sort of stopped and went, oh, what am I doing with my life? I don't know what I'm doing. Everything's going to end soon, and I think I've pretty much filled most of my life, and oh shit, I haven't done anything yet. And did you go through that, or do you still have?
You nailed it.
Yeah,
you nailed it. Yeah, exactly. There was a pinnacle moment where I realized, holy shit, time's ticking. I'm halfway through it, I think. Let's get some shit done. And yeah, I haven't looked back. I'm just really trying to do as much as I can without burning myself out. You know, it's hard. It's hard, but there's definitely enough at the moment to keep me busy.
Yeah, and I think another cool thing that I've found, and it's only been in the last few years where actually pretty much when I turned 30, where I've actually started to really try and do as much as I can without, as you mentioned, like burning out. And I found that just saying yes to a lot more things, and things that normally I would just, my knee-jerk reaction would be no. You know, I'd be a little bit reluctant or a little bit conservative, you know, a bit risk adverse, you know, and just go, nah, I won't do that because there's too much of an unknown there. I don't know what the outcome's going to be. And I've definitely taken on the yes a lot more. And I found that there's just been so many more opportunities that I just never would have thought existed just for me being present or just showing up and just being there and doing something. And it's just amazing where things can lead.
Yeah, being proactive is so rewarding for anything, you know. Even if you don't want to go to a gig one night, but you do, and you end up meeting some other musos, and the next thing you know, you're in a band and you've made an album.
Yeah.
You just got to say yes to everything. Yeah, I can't say no to most things. If it's going to be artistic or rewarding in any way, I got to do it.
Well, I'll name drop him again, and I think he'll be stoked if and when he eventually gets around to listening to this. I'm sure actually he'll listen to this pretty quickly. But James, I mean, I watch that guy, and especially his Instagram feed is just out of this world. But
yeah,
he said it when we spoke on the podcast as well. I mean, he just lives every day, and he's got that similar sort of outlook where, you know, you just don't know. You don't know what's going to happen, and let's try and do as much as I can. Let's try and taste as many things as I can and experience as many things as I can. And every day something pops up in my feed, and I might be doing the most boring thing in the world, sitting around and thinking that I'm being productive or whatever, and then up pops in this feed him making a bloody knife out of I don't know, a piece of metal or whatever, or he's scooting around, or, you know, he's doing Mario Kart in Tokyo, or he's you know, on stage with no effects, or he's doing all these crazy things, and I just go, oh, you got me, James. You got me. All right, okay. What I need, but I always see it in a positive way, because it's just so motivating to see. I mean, we all have our challenges, and we've all got the things that we've got to deal with, and on a day-to-day basis, and it's never smooth sailing whatsoever. But and he wears his heart on his sleeve for sure, and but he's definitely made a real effort to just live as much as he can, and it's just so cool to see. And I definitely take a page out of his book.
He's so inspirational. Ever since I met him, he's inspired me to push myself harder. And I found that that's so good, being around people that are so proactive, like James and others like him, and the people that aren't proactive, but the ones, you know, that you hold dear, they're sort of the ones you need to bring along with you, and it does rub off as well. And I've seen people become, you know, dug themselves out of a hole and become fantastic people. People like James, hang around those people.
Oh, well, I certainly had my eyes opened after speaking to him, and I can't even remember how. I think I might have found him randomly. We were following each other on Instagram, or I was following him. I don't even know how the hell it happened. I was going, who the hell is this guy? And so I thought, I'll stuff it, I'll have a chat to him. And it sort of just, everything changed. And it's just incredible to know that that people like him exist, and even just talking to you and hearing some of the things that you've done over the years and what you do now, and having, as I said to you today, like having your finger in so many pies, and just
Mm-hmm.
you know, me sort of being gobsmacked, going, you know, where do you have the time to fit everything in? But it's inspiring to see that, you know, you don't have to pigeonhole yourself to one thing. You don't have to do just one thing, and that's what defines you. It's you can, you know, you can move around, you can shift, you can pivot, you can try different things, you can do something for a little bit of time and then move to something else, and there's no rules.
Yeah, that's right. I think everybody does things that take up a lot of time. Like, I just don't understand people that find time to go to the gym every day. There's no way I could. I mean, walking to the tram, that's enough for me, but it's hard to think of people that find the time to exercise. But like Wednesday night is tumble turn rehearsal, and Tuesday night is another rehearsal with another project, and Thursday is art night where I'm in the garage, and you know, it's every night it's got a booking. I'm fully booked. I think I have one night a week where I can watch a bit of Netflix and not feel guilty about it, you know. So I don't watch much TV, but yeah, when I do, I watch hard.
Netflix is certainly the thing to binge watch on for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's interesting. Just, I mean, that sort of feeds into what I was saying before. I mean, you mentioned time management, and you know, you've got days allocated to certain things, so you've got some routine and structure there that sort of keeps everything orderly, so you can afford to do different things, and everything sort of work in harmony together.
Yeah. There's always time. There's always time to do something. But yeah, definitely having a diary and knowing what's happening tomorrow is handy when there's so much going on. If I didn't have something to keep note, I'd definitely lose track of stuff. But yeah, I think that filling every day with something is pretty important.
Yeah, the diary, or what I use, is I use scrap pieces of paper. I really get excited about using scrap pieces of paper. I feel like I'm giving that shitty little piece of paper some purpose, and and my wife loves, you know, planners and diaries, and she's got beautiful pens, and she loves calligraphy, and she has her stickers, and everything has to be neat and perfect, and it looks nice, but I've got shocking handwriting, and I don't have the patience to sit there to that degree. So every time I stay at a hotel, I grab all those little shitty notepads. If I find like bits of scrap paper left over, I rip the corner off and whatever, and I write over just scrap, and I love it, absolutely love it. But anyway, I was going off on a tangent there, but the point I was trying to make was, in the last few years, I've really found this massive advantage, and it's a bit of a game changer for me, by writing not only a to-do list, but writing it the night before. So planning the next day, and not writing a million stupid things on there so you feel like you're accomplishing something when you're not really doing anything at all, but like just writing like 3 or 4 things, like major things that you got to do. And then you wake up the next day and it's already in your head. Like it's almost like overnight it's processing, it's mapping out, it's working things out in your head. And when you wake up, you're sort of ready to go. And it took me a while to work that out, because I used to sit there in the morning at the table, and I'd be trying to wake up, and then I'm trying to think about what I want to do and that day, and then my head's elsewhere, and then I get distracted by something, and you're just a mess, and it takes you half the day to get into the groove of things. So the day before, it's amazing, and I just think, oh wow, why don't more people do this? I'm a bit late to I feel like I'm late to the party with a lot of this stuff, but yeah,
me too.
When you mentioned the diary, I just thought, oh yeah, no doubt it'd be a similar concept that you do.
Yeah, planning's pretty new to me. I think because there's so much going on, if I didn't plan at least a week ahead, I'd start to lose track of perspective. And at the moment, gigs are priority, so they're the first things to go into the diary. And then rehearsals would revolve around that, and then I'd allocate time for other things. But there is definitely routine each week, which sort of gives me a heads up, and I know what's sort of going to happen each week. But gigs sort of throw you out because you never know when they're going to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good to keep track of things, and to plan ahead is definitely helps.
Well, it's funny because when you say it like that, it's one of those things that everyone would sort of just go, well, no shit, of course you you hear it mentioned all the time. It's such a common term to plan ahead, but it's it's one of those things that you just hear and hear and hear, but you don't actually sort of take it in until you're practicing it, and you go, oh, okay, now that makes sense. Yeah,
that's right. And even little things like knowing you've got a gig in 10 days, so I'll get some new strings. I'll order some new strings for the guitar tomorrow, and it'll arrive in the post, and it'll be stretched and tuned in by gig day. Just little things like that, making sure that all the cables are working and having practice runs outside of rehearsals. Fresh batteries and shit like that.
I just had a whole bunch of horrible thoughts over the years of people showing up to gigs with old strings and stuff breaking on stage, and people asking to borrow stuff and things not getting returned, or the dreaded gaffer tape and no one having any. You remind me as well, which I probably should actually write down. I've actually got to go and buy some new strings because I've got to record in a couple of weeks. So there you go, planning ahead. So thank you for planting those seeds.
Yeah, no worries. You do learn from those experiences, like those stage malfunctions and letting yourself down with poor equipment or just not maintaining them. It's sort of led me to being self-sufficient now in that musical side of my life, where I've got reliable gear and I can record my own music now, and we actually make our own merch here at home. So we're printing T-shirts as well on some nights, and making decals and tote bags and trucker caps and all that sort of stuff. So and releasing EPs that were recorded here at home and mixed and mastered, and everything's done here in house. So it's
total DIY.
And that sort of led from when your guitar strap falls off your guitar mid solo or something, and you're like, I'm not going to let that happen again. And then it branches off to, right, I'm going to buy strap locks. Oh, what's that? And then you find more stuff, and then next thing I know, I'm buying monitor speakers.
Well,
yeah.
But I mean, it's. Oh man, I'm trying to find all these parallels in everything you do, because it's this level of preparedness that I think would no doubt be in everything that you do. And as you mentioned, you said it a few times, like it probably hasn't always been there, but it seems that you've got this, I don't know, like do you get off on being really, really prepared? Do you like things to be organized? Do you like a bit of structure? Is it because I love organizing things. I love to have things in order, and it doesn't always go to plan. Half the time it's poorly executed, but I love the idea of it.
Yeah, I really love structure, and I also love throwing myself into deep ends of things. And I think that's where it all started. Was around 10 years ago when I was living in Brisbane, and I decided to sell everything I had and move to Germany to be with a girlfriend. And all I had was a guitar and a backpack. And I lived there, quit my job making prosthetics, didn't think I'd ever do it again, and went over there and lived as an artist in an artist residency, and learnt to live on the basic sort of limits of existence, and had no sort of skills sort of coping in a foreign country, even though I'm German by default. I never grew up there, so it was really scary for me. And then when I came back, realised that there was so much more to living in Redcliffe, and I needed that cultural fix. And
there's not much culture in Redcliffe.
Yeah, and I love Brisbane, and it's still home, but it just didn't give me that thing that Berlin did when I was over there, and so I moved to Melbourne, which was the most European part of Australia, I thought, and never looked back.
How long were you in Berlin for?
I was only there for about 8 months.
Yeah. Wow. That's it's such an out there thing to do. I mean, I know a lot of people sort of they'll do the backpacking thing and they'll go away for a while and do a bit of traveling. But I mean, you went all in.
Yeah, I think I went there with 5,000 Australian dollars, and that lasted me for 8 months, and I was pretty much collecting empty bottles and cashing them in for full bottles of beer, and just eating sausage and Brussels sprouts for 8 months, and just trying to make some money playing music, which was, they were paying me in beer and sausage, so that was it.
Sustainable.
And my visa ran out and I had to go home.
Yeah. Was that the first time you'd gone overseas as well, or had you been overseas before?
I've been overseas a couple of times. As a kid, I was in the UK. I went to school there for a little bit.
Oh, right.
And then I went back to the UK just before I finished year 12. It was in 1989. And I worked in a toy shop over there for a while. Oh, that was my first job.
Wow.
That was the only other thing I've done apart from prosthetics, was working in a toy shop, which was pretty cool, making radio-controlled cars and all that sort of stuff.
Well, actually, did you say making them?
Yeah, building
them.
RC cars. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Huh. There you go.
We actually, our toy shop had the fastest electric RC car in the UK, and I think we did 83 kilometres an hour in it.
That's bizarre.
Yeah, that's great
so cool.
fun.
Wow, incredible. I'm keeping an eye on the time, but I wanted to ask you as well, because, and I'll put everything on the website in the show notes of all the projects and everything you're involved with, but I mean, what's the best way to describe some of the music that you've been doing, whether it be your solo stuff or with some of the other projects? Is there a common theme across a lot of the music, or a common influence or anything like that, for people to get a bit of an idea of what sort of stuff you're putting out there?
Not really. Every project I'm involved in is completely different to the others. Yeah. My solo music is all quite dark, very sort of Leonard Cohen, Nick Cave style sort of murder ballads. So most of the songs I write are about songs of serial killers and lost love and misfortune and all that sort of stuff. And then I'm in a punk band. Well, we've been called tradie punk, whatever that is, but Tumble Turn. Yeah. We sing songs about buying a sausage at Bunnings and trying to get a plumber on a Sunday and doing cash jobs, fishing for carp and all that sort of blokey stuff.
I love it.
Just a bit of a laugh. We got together people. Just as a laugh, and for the people. And then I play bass for a folk singer, completely different again, very sort of atmospheric crooner, sort of oceanic tales. and then our other one is Kalashnik, of course, which is the sort of a comedy trio where we all dress up as Russian Soviet soldiers or generals, and I play keyboard in that band. We just sing songs about pedophiles and having a shower and just weird, just totally bizarre stuff. It's like Monty Python in Russia on LSD, I think.
Man. It sounds like such a Melbourne thing. It's just it's so out there. It's just
yeah. Now that I think about it, that would not go down well in Brisbane.
No, not at all. That's cool though. I mean, geez, I think all of that just ties in with everything else that you're doing. Like everything is just completely different, and it's all creative. It's you just trying to, I don't know, it's scratching an itch. I'm assuming, like this constant itch of just wanting to do lots of different things.
Yeah, I think I'd get bored if I was in 3 or 4 bands that were all playing the same thing, or making prosthetics during the day and then making prosthetics at home. I need to do something different every day to sort of keep my brain active.
Well, I'll tell you what, my brain is, I don't know whether it's active, but I'm drained just listening to all the things that you're doing. I'm getting a similar feeling after speaking with James. It's just incredibly inspiring just to know people like you guys exist, where you're just doing so many different things and you're engaged with so many different people and different things, and just being creative and putting yourself out there. Like it's all these things are just from the outside looking in, they're all different versions of yourself. It's different things, different colors of yourself, and you're not limiting yourself just to one thing. And I think it's really, really motivating. So now I'm sort of thinking, oh, what else can I shove into my day? What do my Tuesdays look like? All right, okay.
It's almost like having multiple personalities, I think.
Yeah.
Where you have to take on these different personas. Where one day I'm Mr. Murder Ballad, and the next day I'm wearing safety glasses in a punk band with high-vis vests on, and the next day we're in a candlelit room playing folk music. Or, it's all these different me's. I can't keep track of myself sometimes.
Certainly makes life interesting.
Yeah. I feel sorry for my wife sometimes. She goes, "Which Karl are you today?"
Hey, let me check the day of the week.
Yeah, I'm punk Karl today.
I love it. Oh man, I'm going to let you go, but far out, man. I've got a lot of notes to write out, because there's so many things that you're doing, and I'll have to pick your brain later on to get some other things that you mentioned, because no doubt there'll be heaps of people listening that will want to check out some of this music that you've been doing and everything else. So I've found a bunch of stuff, but I'll have to hit you up for some other things as well. But I really, really appreciate it. I don't know what your Fridays are meant to be on your calendar, but I'm glad that you carved out a little bit of time to have a chat with me.
Oh, no worries, mate. No, it's anytime.
Thanks, everyone. If you want to reach out to Karl, I think the easiest place to go is andysocial.net. I've got everything to his prosthetic work, to all the projects, the music projects that he's involved with, these different bands, his solo stuff, his artwork, everything will be in the show notes over at andysocial.net. I'll have embedded videos, all sorts of content there, some photos, some really cool stuff. So make sure you go over there. As with every episode, I've got heaps of different stuff from our guests over there in the show notes. So go and check it out. And thank you, Karl. Great chat. I think we could have kept chatting for ages. Just really, really fun to talk, and hopefully we can catch up soon for a beer. That'd be really, really cool. Now, before we wrap it up, as always, if you want to support this podcast, you guys know the drill. Sharing it around, social media love hearting, retweeting, tagging, commenting, all that crap goes a long way. Leaving a review somewhere online is also really, really good. That word of mouth does big things for this podcast. You can buy merchandise via the lord.net.au or andysocial.net websites. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It goes a long way. You can support the Self-Starter podcast as well, selfstarter.com.au, if you want to check out my other podcast all about small business, self-employment and freelancing as well. But all of it helps. So thank you so much, small or big. It just goes a long way, and I really, really appreciate it. So thank you, folks. Before we wrap it up, I've got 2 shows for this year for Lord. September 22nd at Max Watts in Melbourne. We are doing, that's a Saturday night, September 22nd. We are headlining the Metal United Down Under Festival at Max Watts there with a whole range of awesome bands. Some of the guys have been on the podcast, some of the other band members. And we're also playing Saturday, November 3rd at the Bullface Stag. We are headlining day 2 of the Steel Assassins Festival, and that'll be a lot of fun. And you can get tickets for both of those shows via lord.net.au or the andysocial.net websites if you click on the shows tab, or Moshtix are selling tickets for both those shows, and I think Oztix are also selling tickets for the Melbourne show as well. So a few different ways of grabbing tickets. Please, if you've got the opportunity to buy tickets up front, definitely do so. It just goes a long way to support the promoters who are putting on these shows, and in turn the bands, and just further validates these great shows, and just helps everyone. So if you've got the opportunity to buy in advance, definitely do so. And I think that's it, folks. I'm just going to wrap it up now. So as always, thank you. Another episode in the bag, another great guest. And until next week, folks, take care. Ta-ta.